Ladies and gentlemen, hey, hi, how you doing? Happy holidays, Merry Christmas to those who celebrate. Appreciate you taking the time to check out the channel. Today, we are focusing on what might be the next most broken meta. This is a weapon that I've actually had my eye on for some time, ever since we really first got the, true stats about it and all the detailed statistics when it comes to its TTK and how it's the most efficient. There are some things with this gun, though, that you really got to watch out for. I think a lot of people might be considering this to be a little bit too good in some regards. However, at the end of the day, it's still a weapon that is going to pose a serious threat, especially as we see other weapon tuning to probably some of the more popular guns in the game in the future. And what we're talking about here today is the MTZ-762 battle rifle. So as we get into the stats and into the class setups here, if you enjoyed the video, if you find it helpful, do me a favor, drop a like on it. It is always seriously appreciated. And if you're new here, you want to guarantee that every single day you are up to date with all things going on in COD, be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on those post notifications. So initially here, I want to start on true game data. As always, shout out to Tony, the man, the myth, the legend, the Warzone wizard when it comes to stats, because he's got all these detailed statistics up here for us when it comes to some of the best weapons in the game. And so I've taken a handful of them. We know the Bruin is insane. The Pulum Yacht's crazy with the conversion kit on it. The TAC Eradicator is one of the best options. The Bass B obviously has been considered to be the most broken gun in the game, since launch. It obviously got some nerfs, but it's still ridiculously good for close range and for long range there. We've got two versions of the MTZ-762, which is especially important. One is full auto and one is semi-auto. Then we've got the Ram 7, that's the fastest TTK assault rifle. And when we go ahead and we look at the chart here, we're obviously looking at 300 health, so full armor, full plates, and combination shot TTK. This is a paid feature, but it's by far the most accurate way to look at TTK stats. And what you see when you look at this graph is something very obvious. We've got the vast majority of the weapons all clumped up here in a super competitive form, and one line that stands out drastically. And that one line is our white one here, the MTZ-762 in semi-auto. And this is immediately where a lot of people are a little bit confused, or rather, they don't have all the information, I'd say, when they're forming their opinion on the MTZ-762. Because trust me, I've seen a lot of people saying, Zach, you're not talking about the MTZ-762 semi-auto. It's crazy broken, better than any other gun in the game. Well, here's the thing. While it is a very good TTK, this is not actually accurate with what we're looking at here. And while Tony does have insane stats here, he himself has actually specified that this is not exactly what you want to be looking at when you're trying to compare TTKs in this specific situation for something like the semi-auto MTZ-762. So this is actually what he posted back when he was gathering the data for the semi-auto battle rifles. He said, the Bass B, the Sidewinder, and the MTZ-762 semi-auto damage profiles are live. No attachments. I just added them as new weapons, so they don't have attachments either. We'll be adding a fire mode toggle switch eventually, just a temporary band-aid. But this is what's super important. Remember that these are showing theoretical TTK with maximum fire rate, which is not achievable without cheating through like a macro that shoots the gun for you, essentially. Most people will be in the 300 to 400 RPM range when clicking / triggering as fast as possible. And usually if you're going as fast as you can on your trigger, you're also not going to be super accurate unless you are like an absolute top 0.01% player. That's a skill that not many players have, being able to spam at max fire rate and stay on target. The Bass B TTK is using 666 for its semi-auto, but we're not looking at that one. The MTZ is using 540. So at minimum, we're 140 RPM faster than what the usual average is, 300 to 400. So 140 RPM more than what most players can target is what we're seeing on that graph. So unfortunately, currently there's no way on true game data to set like an RPM target here with this. Otherwise, we could see this a lot more accurately. However, when it comes to the 762 MTZ in semi-auto, this TTK is not actually achievable whatsoever. So while yes, it is leaping past everything else, no one outside of cheaters is going to be able to do this. Realistically, it's going to be a lot closer to these other lines. It just won't have the damage drop off. Obviously, it drops off much faster at 19 meters, but then over range, it's going to be thriving a lot more if you can consistently land your shots. But achieving a TTK that's even remotely close to these other lines on the graph is all dependent on you consistently firing at 300 to 400 RPM and staying on target, which drastically increases the skill gap of the semi-auto MTZ-762. but it's still very broken for players who can do that, and it absolutely is considered to be a top tier meta weapon in my opinion. However, you might have noticed if you're looking at these other lines, the MTZ762 is not only viable in semi-auto. In fact, if we get rid of this line here and just look at these, we pay more attention to our yellow line through the first, 30, 35 meters, it's really right there with some of these other fast TTK options in the Bass B and also the, Ram 7, and a little bit ahead of the Bruin and the Pulam Yacht even, which have faster damage drop-offs or earlier damage drop-offs. So its mid-range there becomes extremely efficient. And then even over range, it ends up becoming the second best TTK just behind the Bruin, and then slightly above things like the Bass B and decently above things like the Ram 7 and even the TAC Eradicator, which is surprising because really the MTZ762 even in full auto is not all that difficult to control. I would say it's maybe not as easy as the Pulam Yacht or the Bruin here and there. However, it is certainly viable and not nearly as difficult as something like a Bass B or the MTZ762 in semi-auto, which means that if you want to play the MTZ762 in semi-auto and you're a really high skill player, you can do so, and we'll be breaking down a setup for that here in just a moment. But if you just straight up wanted to use the MTZ762 as is and use it in full auto, it's also extremely good there as well. Not nearly as broken, but still one of the best options in the entire game. So let's break down some setups for it here real quick. This initial one is based around semi-auto gameplay if you are just using it in single fire. Initially, I'd recommend the Corio Eagle Eye 2.5 times optic. This is great for mid to long range, obviously, where this is thriving the most. The 30 round magazine here is the max, however, and this applies to semi-auto and full auto. That's not a ton of ammo, so its damage per mag is not going to be as reliable. You are going to find yourself reloading more often than not, especially in semi-auto if you're missing more shots than you would like. So that is a huge drawback as well. Not only is the semi-auto TTK not that realistic, still crazy broken, but not as realistic and broken as it might seem on the graph, but its magazine capacity is definitely a limiter as well. This is really important for semi-auto. The Ripper underbarrel. Better control, better idle sway, and better centering and recentering stabilization there. Meaning that when you are tapping this and spamming it, its recentering speed where it's going back to the base center of the screen is better than without this underbarrel. So if you were using a different one, you wouldn't have those pros there. This is one of the best underbarrels for semi-auto or for burst weapons in the game. We do have the Spirit Fire suppressor on here. Obviously, that's going to be better control, better range, and better velocity. That's all clutch. And then for semi-auto, I go for the Blackthorn barrel. This is just better range and better velocity, making it a little bit more consistent over range and easy to use. And if we were to go into the firing range here and set this to semi-auto, you can see that keeping up with a fast fire rate while also staying accurate, it's difficult to do. Now, obviously, you can spam this thing fast, and I think that what I'm doing here is pretty decent, but doing it consistently and staying on target, obviously, the faster you spam this, the more recoil there's going to be, so you kind of have to temper your speed. But even if you're just doing it consistently, you can stay on target relatively well. But it's definitely a very high skill weapon here, and one that I feel like is going to be the most, applicable in the mid range there, where it does have that significant gap over some of the other guns in the game. It's not something that everyone is going to be able to pick up and use in semi-auto, though, to achieve the broken TTK. Now, that said, let's talk full auto here. And admittedly, there's not many differences, but the ones that are changed are important. So again, we've got the Eagle Eye optic, we've got the 30 round mag, which especially in full auto, when you do have that consistent fire rate, is even more noticeable there. Instead of the Ripper underbarrel, though, we're going for the heavy support. This primarily helps out with horizontal control, a tiny bit of vertical, not super noticeable there, but it's going to make the pattern a lot more predictable in full auto. I also go for the clinch barrel here, which actually adds in a little bit less range and velocity than over on the Blackthorn. It's still giving you some, but not as much, but this is giving you better control as well, so it's just easier to use. And then I also go for the Spirit Fire suppressor yet again. So this setup's going to be a bit more straightforward and a bit more welcoming regardless of your skill level, and as we saw on the graph, so capable of competing with the best guns in the game. Then here, if obviously we're in full auto, you can see it's really not too difficult to use at all. It's very low recoil with that crazy TTK, and the main problem here is just that magazine capacity is not all that great. But when it comes down to it, the MTZ762 absolutely is a top tier contender, and depending on your skill level, could be busted in certain fights. So this is definitely one you want to mess around with, try and learn it, regardless of how you want to play it, full auto, semi-auto. It's a beast for sure. That said, that is going to wrap things up. If you enjoyed the video, if you found it helpful, do me a favor and drop a like on your way out. And of course, if you're new here, you want to guarantee you're up to date every single day with news, updates, meta breakdowns, I got you covered right here. So feel free to hit that subscribe button and turn on those post notifications. But once again, thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, take it easy. Have an awesome rest of your day. And I'll catch you later. Peace out.